In this episode, it's all about traveling in and around Africa. This is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, this is a selfish show because all the stuff that we're going to be talking about, I want to know about. And luckily, my good friend, Mr. Martin Bailey, is here to help educate me on the ins and outs of traveling in and around Africa. He's been there several times. He's going back. We're going to talk about how you get ready to go there. What do you do while you're there? How do you shoot there? How do you remain safe? What to eat, what not to eat, all that stuff. We're going to do that in this interview. So Martin Bailey, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks, Frederick. Thanks for having me.
No, this is good. This is thanks for coming on. You know, I think the last, like we were saying while we were in the green room, the last time you were on, it was Black Panther had just hit, right? And
yeah.
I think Chris Berry and I had just done a cinematography of Black Panther episode where we kind of talked about the art and the importance of the movie and all that stuff. So, you know, you've been trying to do an interview like this. I've been trying to do an interview like this with you for a while. So now I got you. You're on the hot seat.
Absolutely.
So
Fire away.
You are known, you know, I mean, you're obviously you're a veteran podcaster. You've been podcasting before I was podcasting, right? And yeah. So you've got episodes upon episodes in the can, but you also are, and I'll use the word prolific at these travel workshops to these exotic destinations like Namibia and Morocco. We're going to talk about that a little bit as we walk through this. But I want to start first with what draws you to the continent of Africa as a workshop destination with all the other great places on the planet. What is it about Africa that draws you into it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've obviously worked all around the world. I've done Antarctica, Greenland, Iceland, and all of these places I will be going back to. It really sort of comes in waves as to the sort of places that I want to go, and then the prices of the places go up and sort of force us out for a while. But Africa, to me, you may remember a number of years ago, 7 years ago, I had just a pesky little brain tumor that sort of came along and shook my world for a while.
I remember that very well.
And I remember at the time, the first time I was sort of, obviously we were a bit numbed when we heard, but the first time I shed a tear about the fact that I might actually not be here to do any of the things that are still on my bucket list was when I realized that I'd not yet been to Iceland and Africa. And at the time, I didn't really think about which country I wanted to go to. I just wanted to go to one of the beautiful wildlife and landscape areas of Africa. And that was when I realized that's the first time I got those little dimples in my chin and a couple of tears rolled down my cheeks. And then initially I spoke about this with a good friend of mine who was also running tours in Africa, Jeremy Woodhouse. He's still this guy is like touring the whole year. He's an amazing travel photographer. And he gave me my first chance to go to Namibia. He said, if you can bring some customers along with us, you've got a place on my trip. And that was really him handing me a bone that got me onto the African content for the first time in 2013. Yeah. And we did a couple of tours together. And then, you know, his tours sort of went off in a different direction. He wanted to do different things. So with his permission, kind permission, I broke off. And for the last few years, I've been doing my own Namibia tours, including not only I call it the complete Namibia tour because we literally almost fully circumnavigate the country. And we visit all of the main spots. But I added a bunch of things like 4 extra days in the Etosha National Park, and that's just like wildlife from morning till dusk, and it really does add a lot to the trip. So I mean, it's a long trip. It's a 17-day tour. Yeah. But it's one of these that really gives people a great introduction. And I personally think that Namibia is one of the best locations to visit in Africa. And on the other extreme, of course, I'm doing Morocco, which is a very different country. But also we get into the desert. We do sand dunes and things like that in both of them. And I just really. Another friend of mine, I'm dropping names here, but another friend of mine, Graham Morgan, an incredible Australian photographer, he told me that once you get the red dust of Africa in your shoes, you'll never get it out.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard that. Yeah. Well, you know what? I want to chat about. There's so much on my list to walk through, but one of the main things is I want to see if we can't, or if you can't, help demystify and remove apprehension from going someplace like Africa. Especially for, a lot of my audience are Americans. They're in North America, U.S. and Canada, etc., and Mexico. And what I've seen in my short time on the planet is Americans, and I know I'm generalizing here, so don't come after me, Americans. So Americans generally don't travel. Many of us, most of us, don't travel outside of the U.S. And I'm not sure why, but I think a lot of it is because of fear of the unknown, or the comfort and the ease of not going anywhere. So I wanted to chat with you about that. And if somebody's going to make a commitment and jump on one of these workshops with you, let's say, to Namibia, right? They're going to head out there. They're going to spend a couple weeks with you out there, going to these exotic locations. A lot of the questions would be like, oh, well, what are we going to eat? Are we going to be sleeping, outside, or wildebeest's going to come get me, or, am I going to catch something? Are they going to be welcoming to me as a person from a different culture? All of these kinds of questions come up. So help me understand that, and help me to the person that's sitting on the fence and they're like, yeah, I want to go, but this stuff is stopping me. What would you say to them?
Go. It's
it's easy. So next question.
No, it's I understand that, and travel can be a little bit worrisome, and there are probably areas of Africa that I would not feel comfortable going to, just because, regardless of who you are, where you're from, there are areas that are dangerous, and I pick my locations, and that is also one of the reasons why I pick Namibia, because it's probably one of the safest countries in Africa, and it's not perfect. There's occasionally you'll hear of someone having their car's been had stuff stolen from the car, but for us, we always make sure that everything's locked up, and we've never had anything happen. But you do hear of that stuff. And also there are areas where you can go to, say, for example, a gas station, and there's I raised my iPhone once. There was some guys rolled in an open top car, and they were obviously well, I don't know about obviously, but they were up to no good in some ways. And I raised my iPhone because they'd got this car. It looked great and everything. And they immediately started shouting at me, hey, what are you doing taking photo? Don't you take our photo? And occasionally you get stuff. But in general, if you use your street smarts, you don't have a lot of trouble. And also, like, for example, one of the things that I always recommend to my customers is, the participants of my own trip, if they're going to stay in South Africa has a lot of people get killed, I don't know, probably on a daily basis, because it's not the safest country on the planet. And I always recommend them a specific lodge. They come and pick you up at the airport, and they take you into the gates of the lodge, and the only time you get out of the car is after the gates have closed. Wow. And if that helps you to feel safe, then that's fine. If you want to then go out into the city, go with someone that knows the place. I wouldn't wander around in an area, even in South Africa. There are areas that I would not walk, and but I would if I was with either a local or a guide or someone that knew the area.
And that little piece of advice right there, Martin, I think that applies to pretty much every place on the planet. right? I mean,
this is true.
You know, go to Chicago. You can take that same sentence, that same paragraph, and apply it to Chicago. You can apply it to Sacramento. You can apply it to London. You can apply it to New Zealand. You know, there's wherever humans congregate, that advice is paramount. So, which means, you know, you're gonna operate with the same level of common sense that you would in your own neighborhood as you would in a foreign country. Maybe a level stepped up a little bit because it's completely foreign to you. But people are people, you know, it's the same DNA, you know, it makes everyone, we had the same, for the most part, this, you know, we're all made from the same stardust, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we all started down there in South Africa. So
yes, it did. Yes, it did. So let's get down to some brass tacks here. So, okay. So this hypothetical person has made the decision that I'm going on this trip. What do you advise them to bring with them? Because when I travel, I've traveled not as much as you, but I've traveled a fair amount internationally. And the night before getting on the plane is always the most stressful for me, trying to decide what I should take, what I should not take, you know, Googling weather patterns and, do I need waterproof this and that? Or should I, you know, how many cameras do I need to bring? Oh, how many lenses? Do I need to bring everything or just one? You know, how do you advise your travelers on how to prepare for success on an adventure like this?
You know, every trip that I do, I actually, as soon as people sign up, I send them usually a 15 or so page PDF guidebook. And that has everything you need in there. For example, and it's specific to each country. For example, with Namibia, an important thing is that you can't turn up with big, hard suitcases. Because most of the time you're in Africa, a lot of the time you're actually going to be traveling on small planes, and then there's a weight restriction as well. But the way I do Namibia is we have converted Land Cruisers, Toyota Land Cruisers that have lots of space in the back for shooting. The roof lifts up, but the luggage space is at the back of that, and literally everybody's bag has to be jigsaw puzzle. It's like a cubic jigsaw puzzle, and if anyone if they bring big hard cases, it makes packing the luggage very difficult. So we always recommend bringing a soft case. And if you have things in your case that need to be particularly protected, wrap them in clothes or put them in separate bags within your case. You know, but the big black. I've got a big black. The North Face soft bag. And I actually did a number of years ago. I did a video packing for Namibia. And so there's a link to that in my guidebook, and I can send you a link to that because that's obviously open to anyone that wants to see that.
Yeah, definitely send me a link to that. I'll put it in the blog post for this episode.
Yeah. So I mean, there are things that you need. I mean, if you say, for example, one of the things that I do is I take a washing line. And then you can, because generally in African countries, especially in lodges, you have places in the rooms where you could actually wrap a rope, a string around, and hang up a washing line and just do some washing in your room. Having said that, I haven't taken that for the last few times because it's relatively cheap and easy to get washing done at the lodges.
Okay.
Yeah, and they actually, you hear a lot of advice that some of the lodges, for various reasons, will not wash underwear. And I've actually not been to a lodge that won't wash underwear either, although I'm sure they exist.
Was it you? It was either you or someone that's also a travel photographer that was recommending to me a couple of years ago the special kind of wicking underwear that are washable. I think the brand name is Ex Officio.
It wasn't. I've heard of those. It wasn't me, but I actually don't bother taking special underwear, but I do. All of my most of my travel, my pants, for example, are always the thin, quick drying material, and that way, even if I just get hot and sweaty, then I know it doesn't sound great, but it'll dry off more quickly than if you're wearing heavy jeans, denim and stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, quick drying stuff is good. I always also carry one of those travel towels, which is, if necessary, I could wet it and actually have a freshen up a little bit, and then it dries within minutes because they, once you wring them out, they're really quick drying.
Yeah.
They're good for travel as well. And I use those for cleaning my gear. The same ones, I can wipe my face with it, I rinse it off, and then I can wipe my gear with it as well if necessary.
Yeah. See it's those little tidbits is I think why you want to go on an organized trip versus just saying, you know what, I'm just going to go and hang out in that country, right? And shoot, you want to go along with somebody that's been there before and can answer these types of questions for you. So then that said, so we transition off of like, okay, the kind of clothing and those sorts of things that you bring. What do you advise your travelers to bring as far as gear? Is any gear better than others? Like, can they bring Micro Four Thirds or iPhones, or do they need the latest Canon or Nikon with, a 30-foot lens on it? Like, what's the recommendation from the pro?
Depending on, I think it's a lot about balance. And for Namibia, although we do wildlife, I, for example, don't take my big behemoth 200 to 400 millimeter lens. I take my 100 to 400. And the balance there is because we are doing, it's a 17-day trip, but we're only doing like wildlife full on for 4 days of that. And although we do see wildlife, and we'll stop and photograph it on the road if we see something cool. It's really, the 100 to 400 is enough. I sometimes wish that I had slightly longer, but I can carry all of my kit with two professional sort of, as in the professional format, with the battery grip. I carry two DSLR cameras with the battery grips on them and a really right stuff L bracket. I carry an 11 to 24, a 24 to 105, and a 100 to 400, and now also the 85 millimeter f1.4 from Canon for portraits. But that's because we do portrait work in Namibia. We do it in Morocco as well, so I'll be taking it there this year.
So four lenses, two bodies. Four
lenses, and that enables me to do landscape, the culture and people work, as well as some. I mean, if you take a look at some of the images that I've got on my Namibia Tour page.
I'm going to bring that up right now while you're talking. So
there's actually, there's one there of a lion. He looks really fierce. If you click on these images, there's a problem with the next gen gallery at the moment in that they don't open the image you click on. It goes to the start of the pack again, which is annoying.
Oh, okay.
But if you look in there, there's one of a lion that he's actually yawning.
I see it.
That was like I forget exactly, but that was shot at like 200 millimeters. So, in answer to your question, I don't think an iPhone's going to cut it when it comes to wildlife. You could do the rest of the trip with an iPhone if you wanted to. Personally, although the image quality is great now, I like to have a little bit more control. We do certain things. We go to some places where we do some long exposures. We have opportunities to do astrophotography and photograph the Milky Way and things like that. So, ideally you'll want a camera with a little bit of control. It doesn't necessarily have to be an SLR. Some of our clients at the moment arrive with the Sony's a popular camera, the Sony Alphas. Micro Four Thirds, some people bring as well. The only thing that I noticed with people bringing mirrorless cameras is that they pretty much all use more batteries than people are used to. So if you are new to a mirrorless system and you don't think, you think, oh, well, a couple of batteries will do. On long days when you're photographing a lot, it probably won't. I think I advise in my guidebook, bring 2 to 3 times more batteries and memory cards than they think you could possibly use. And that is something that every trip, that people have to loan each other batteries, cards and things, because even with that advice, people generally don't bring enough. But it's they're the sort of things. It doesn't really matter if you've got a camera, a system that you're happy with. It doesn't really matter what it is. I use Canon, so it makes I can help people with Canon cameras more. But it's not just me. I mean, I understand the Nikon system to a degree, the Sony system to a degree, but also what we find is is that generally these trips are that Namibia is either 5 or 10 participants, depending on how many people sign up. We do 1 or 2 cars. But we always have people in the group that can help each other out.
Sure,
It's not just me. Although I'm there 24/7 for people. Anyone that's got questions, I will stop what I'm doing and go and help. There's some beautiful testimonials at the bottom of my tour page that talk about this. But it's my job to help the people that have paid money to come and travel with me in these locations. So that's my priority. But other people are always happy to help. If there's another Nikon user in the group and someone's got a question that I can't answer, quite often that person can. And so it's one of those things that we form a group. And this year's Namibia trip everybody clicked really well, and people were helping each other out as well as me and Rich, the guy that I asked to co-host this year with us. We all sort of helped each other out, and it turns into a really good sort of thing as far as learning new technique and creativity and all of that. It really does sort of help that.
Now, Martin, when you're there's so many questions. How do you as the tour guide manage? So you say it's 10 people. What's a day in the life of you managing 10 people? Like walk me through that from the night before, actually. So like going to bed, then waking up, what happens that day? How often do we eat? We get dehydrated. Is there water available? Like what? Take me on the ground with Martin.
Yeah, it depends again, but the majority of the time, especially for the Africa trips, we always have water in the vehicle. Everyone is given so that we don't throw plastic away every day. Everyone is given a bottle at the beginning of the trip, and we have these big, I think they're 5 or 10 liter bottles of water. And every time we get out of the vehicle, our 2 local guides and drivers, incredibly knowledgeable people, they say, anyone for water? And we just take the top off our flask, they fill it up, and we've always got water.
You stay hydrated.
The thing is with the trips, what I normally do is one of the first things I say to people is that we never go to bed without a start time. Because the start time can vary every day, and this goes for all of my trips. So I make sure that before everyone, normally what I do is I wait until everyone's just about finished their dessert at dinner, and then I'll stand up and sort of address the group. And I just tell them where we're going the next day, what we can expect to see, what time we're going to be leaving. And if sometimes if we need any specific gear, like we're leaving before sunup and we need a headlamp or some sort of a flashlight, I'll try to remember to let them know that they need that. Anything specific that they need, I'll feed that information to the group at the end of dinner the previous night. And then I generally will just, as we're going along, most of the dinners, the lunch, if we're out and about and we're going to be stopping somewhere for lunch, I will be talking with our guides, and we'll just check the day before where we're going to go, and we sort of adjust the plan as necessary. Say, for example, like this year, we heard that there was a family of cheetah in a specific area in the Etosha National Park. Nice. So we decided to head for a specific water hole, and there we used the facilities and then drove out to wait for a cheetah. And we found her with 3 cubs, beautiful photos.
Wow.
But this was basically us on the move. We heard. In fact, one of our guests heard initially from someone that there was a family of cheetah nearby, and we checked the ledger at one of the nearby lodges, and there'd been some sightings. So we they heard it was a leopard, but it was the same area, the same number of cubs. So we think they'd mistaken a cheetah for a leopard. But we just checked it out. Luckily, people are very generous. We can be sitting in a car and waiting for something to happen, and another car other people in the park will drive past, and they'll stop. They'll take their own time to stop, wind down the windows, and say, there's a herd of elephants back there at the waterhole.
Really cool.
Yeah, and
really
yes,
cool.
people help each other out. Yeah,
So it's
and
not. It definitely doesn't sound like you are on a Disneyland on the rails kind of tour where everyone piles into the truck and like Jurassic Park, right? Remember Jurassic Park where everyone gets into the bus and then, oh, look, those are the Stegosaurus. Okay, on to the next, those are the Brontosaurus, this is more organic, it sounds like. Is that fair?
Oh, it is. I mean, it's, although the Etosha National Park is huge, and although there are some private reserves around it where they can pretty much guarantee that they've got certain types of animals, the Etosha National Park, it's wild. It's all the thing is with Etosha is you're not allowed out of the car, you're not allowed to go off road, but from where we are able to go, we get some great shots. The majority of the wildlife work that you see on my tour page is from Etosha. And they really are beautiful, beautiful places to go. We even saw a honey badger this year. I don't know if you've ever seen those. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos where they.
I have seen those. The honey badgers are no joke.
But yeah, we've seen a lot of stuff there, and people are very generous with knowledge of the animals that are around. But really, wildlife is. Although it's very special to me, I sort of classify myself as a landscape and a wildlife photographer. So I want to get that sort of work. But Namibia is, the majority of the tour is about the beautiful landscapes and the people. We visit the Himba people. We have interactions with people across the country.
And how accepting are the people there? That would be one of my concerns as a traveler. Like, first of all, I would be apprehensive as to, like, I don't want to disrupt what's going on there with my tourist self and my camera and me showing up as an American with my expensive camera, taking pictures of these people's, that may or may not be happy, right? So I would be apprehensive about that. But then I'd also be apprehensive about not being accepted there, and just, like, oh, yeah, who's this guy, showing up in my, like, if somebody showed up in my neighborhood taking pictures of me, I would be like, why are you in my neighborhood taking pictures of me? So is it that? So set my mind at ease about that part of it.
I mean, we can't guarantee people's reactions, but generally people are good-spirited. Morocco people don't like you to take their photographs there. They will be very standoffish. Sometimes they'll say no. They'll be really firm that you are not allowed to take their photo.
Do you know why that is? Is it cultural, religious?
I think it's more of a cultural thing. They've probably. I think in Morocco there's also a sense that people with all of this expensive gear are coming in and they take photos and expect to be able to walk on. Right. Where these people, a lot of the people, they want to sell you something. They're making a living from selling their carpet or their scarves or the turbans or whatever. And so, I mean, it's always nice if someone in the group actually wants some of the things that they're selling. But when you go through and you're going through areas where they've got these time and again, you only need one turban. I only needed one fez.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you sort of, you have to politely walk on. But there are in the middle of the middle of that sort of environment, there are people that will say, I mean, there's one person in our group in Morocco last year. He walked up to a guy, really good looking young guy with a blue turban against a blue doorway, I think it was. And he said, can I take your photograph? And the guy said, yeah, of course. And our participant automatically started to walk on, thinking that just expecting that he was going to be told no. And I said, he's agreed. He's agreed. Let's take his photo. And so there's sort of, it can be, there are people that are very, very open to it. And we also, the thing in Morocco is we set up some of the shoots. We have someone that knows we're going to be there on a certain day.
Oh, good.
And they'll come out and pose for us in some of the beautiful adobe buildings and stuff like that. I
was going to ask about that. Just not so much the preset type environments, but if you're in something, you're after lunch, you see the guy with the blue hat on in front of the blue door, and he just happens to be there. What's the etiquette around compensation for people? Should you be tipping? Should you not be tipping? Is it an insult to or not tip? Like,
I think the main thing there to do is to make sure that you get with the local guide that is working with you for their advice, because it varies. But say, for example, with the guy in the blue turban, we offered him a tip and he said, no, thank you.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah.
But some people will expect it. Sometimes you have to negotiate the price of the tip before you even make any photographs. With the Himba people in Namibia, for example, what we do is we don't tip them directly as such, but we take them provisions. We'll take them rice. We'll take them water. This is a people that they specifically make their camps. They're semi-nomadic, but they specifically choose an area that is away from waterholes, because in Africa, what congregates at waterholes?
Wildlife.
Things that eat you.
Yeah.
So they specifically, they make sure that they set up a place. It's usually in the shadow of a mountain or a hill, so that they don't get the full sun the whole time. Mm-hmm. And they will be, by design, a little bit of a walk from the waterholes, or a river or something. But that means that quite often the kids or the women have to walk sometimes up to 10 kilometers to get water.
Wow.
So if you can take them a couple of big canisters of water, it really helps them out, and it's more valuable to them in some ways. But even the Himba now, they're wise to it. When we've finished our shoots, they'll sit in a circle and they'll set up a stall, and they'll have dolls, they'll have bracelets and things, and then you ask them how much they all are, and then they'll tell you an extortionate price, and you halve it and give them, if they agree to it. Sometimes now they will not even barter, but if you can,
it doesn't hurt to ask,
pay them
right?
Well, if you can pay them something, and then they feel as though you've gotten something. Obviously, I mean, you don't want to be buying stuff you don't want.
Right.
I came out of a restaurant in Walvis Bay this year. Actually, I went into a restaurant and there was a guy outside selling some really, really beautiful ornaments. And I was with the group, and I said, "I'll come. Are you going to be here when we leave?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "I'll come back, after we've had dinner." Mm-hmm. And we went back out, and I literally, I'm terrible for this in a way, but it's just my character. The guy showed me I bought a beautiful, I think he called it ironwood or something. It's really, really hard wood, a rhinoceros. And I said, "How much do you want for this?" And he said 200 Namibian. It's like $20. Mm-hmm. It's worth 50 anyway, wow. From a Western standpoint. But for him, he was telling me $20, where he probably only wanted 10, because he's expecting me to try and barter.
Sure.
And then he said, I looked at it, and then I flitted my eyes down to the ground. He said, "How about having an elephant as well? Give me 20 for the elephant and the rhino."
Wow.
And I'm saying, you know what? You want $20? Here's $20, and I gave him the 200 Namibian. Mm-hmm. I said, "I don't need anything else right now, because I've got to carry it home. Mm-hmm. But you have what you want." And I walked off, and he thanked me for buying it. I helped him to feed his family.
That's great.
And I got a beautiful rhinoceros that's now sitting in front of my television with the zebra that I bought last year, and
not to mention that memory to go along with it, which is priceless, right?
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I want to get into a little bit about your upcoming Morocco adventure. I want to hear about that and the differences between going to Morocco and any other place in Africa. But the last question I have on this part of it is safety and health, right? Because that's another question that will come up is like, am I going to get sick there? Can I eat the food there? What if I get sick? What happens? Can I drink the water? Should I bring special tablets for my water? Or is it safe? What's the briefing that you give people when it comes to just sort of health and well-being?
Again, a lot of the time, depending on the country, this is included in the guidebook, but what I normally do is I advise, there are no countries that I've visited so far where you can drink the water. What I normally do is I always only drink bottled water, and we make sure that people either have water when they go to the rooms, or people will buy a bottle at dinner time, and have, you know, a lot of the places in Africa, they sell big liter or sometimes 2 liter, but usually a liter bottle of water, you know, very reasonably priced, and people will just buy one of those at dinner and take it back to their room, or make sure that their flask is filled. In Morocco, we actually just have those big, like a pack of 24 bottles of water on the bus the whole time. So people will often just take an extra one when they leave at the end of the day. But yeah, I always, I even recommend not brushing your teeth with water from the faucet, because if you do, you can obviously get something in your mouth and ingest that. I also quite often, I don't even know if you can get these outside of Japan, but I have this like a probiotics stuff that I take proactively before I even leave Japan. When I go to Namibia, I just it just helps your stomach to cope with it better. The first couple of visits I went when I was in Namibia, on the second or third day, I did get a slight upset stomach, and it doesn't help when you're trying to run a group, and it doesn't make it any fun if you're a participant either. So, but there are things I'd need to open my guide to find the actual Western names. But yeah, you often want to take something to make sure that if you do get an upset stomach, you can stop that, or you do something proactive to sort of, you know, to protect yourself from getting it. But I normally in Namibia, I take these pills for the first few days, and then I stop. You don't need to be taking them the whole time. But also, all that, and the other thing is,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing is with Namibia is, as with a lot of countries slightly higher up in, you know, further north in Africa, is the risk of malaria. I actually, because I had an allergic reaction to some medication years ago, I have been advised not to take the malaria pills that you take to, I think they call it prophylactically, which always seems like a weird word to me, but they say that you can take certain stuff that will stop you from getting it or make it better to cope with if you do get it. Personally, at the time we visit Namibia, which is really the middle of their winter, and even though we go into some of the northern areas in the Etosha National Park, there aren't that many mosquitoes around.
It's the wrong season.
Right. I've found that just making sure that you have some repellent with you to spray your room when we're in the areas where there could be mosquitoes, or use the nets. There's often mosquito nets around the beds. Make sure that you use those when you sleep. But I don't actually take anything to prevent malaria, and a lot of the time it's,
but you cover all that, you know, as sort of you're in preparation for the tour stuff, right? This is not stuff you're like, hey, good night everybody, oh, by the way, make sure you take this prophylactic, right? Before you even get into the country, they're prepared, right?
I mean, people often you know, praise our guidebooks. I make sure that every tour I do, even my Japan tours, this is my longest established tours here in Japan. The guidebook is like 12 to most of them are 12 to 18 pages. Some of that is photos just to give people an idea of where they're going.
Sure.
But also, you know, the majority of it is stuff that I've learned that people need to know over the years. And the one for Namibia has all of this. It has the type of clothing you need. It has the temperatures you can expect to find yourself in. And
that would be my Bible right there. You know?
I mean, and I just say, I mean, I don't print a copy out for everybody because you know, the trees wouldn't thank me for it. But I do always, in my pre-tour email, I just remind people to make sure that they've got a copy of it on an iPad or their iPhone, things like that. It has information, for example, on how much to tip the guides. A lot of the time, not me, of course, but if we're working with a local guide, they're often you'll pay a certain amount each day for that person, and we just gather that up at the end of the trip and hand that to them to thank them for working so hard with us. But yeah, all sorts of information. And I think if anyone signs up for a workshop or a tour that doesn't have that sort of thing, you might start questioning the trip itself. Yeah, it's normally, if you're going to be working with someone, going to be signing up for a trip, you're generally going to be wanting to see a well-organized guidebook of some sorts with the itinerary, phone numbers, and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap it up on Morocco. So. Amongst the other places that you go now, you're heading to cover Morocco. Is this your first time going to Morocco, or is this?
Morocco will be my second. We did the first one last year. Morocco it surprised me. I mean, it's a very popular place. There's a lot of people running tours there now. I was invited to run a trip there by a company based in the US, a guy who lived there for many years as well. It really surprised me. I went there knowing that I was going to have a good time, and within a few days it had pretty much stole my heart. And
really?
I want to share it with others.
When is that trip? When is the Namibia trip, and then when is the Moroccan trip?
So the Namibia trip is June the 2nd to the 18th next year, 2019. Okay. The thing with Namibia is, at the moment, because it's becoming so popular, a lot of the lodges are not only increasing their prices quite steeply, they are also requesting confirmation way ahead of time. So I actually have to confirm the numbers for Namibia in about 2 weeks' time. Okay. So if anyone's interested in this, it would be great if they could get in touch and book sooner rather than later. Okay. But for Morocco, let me just check the dates here. Morocco is November the 12th to the 23rd this year.
This year, that's coming up.
Yeah,
okay.
So this is coming up. We actually had a few people drop out recently. So if anyone has any is interested in this and would like to join, we do have spaces.
Cool.
So yeah,
what an adventure! What an adventure!
Both great African trips.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, okay, so let's tie it all up in a bow. The person that was sitting on the fence and they're like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about it," and now they're like, "Okay, I need to learn more. Or maybe I'll go with Martin on one of these trips." What advice, other than just come, like what advice would you give people to get more educated on these different regions? Beyond, you've got a ton of data on your website, but should they just get on Google and start looking around? Should they watch YouTube videos? Like, what's the best way to sort of get a better understanding before you sit on the plane and buckle up?
This is probably not the reply that you are expecting. But my personal way of working is, I find a trip generally based on some visual impetus. I'll see a photo of a place. If people are listening to this today, I'm sure you'll probably put some photos in the post about it and stuff.
Yep.
So people will see something visual that will make them think, okay, maybe I want to go there. But for me personally, once I've decided I want to go somewhere, I block it off. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to be searching for other people's photos while I'm in the field. If you go online and you fill your phone with, great photo from here, great photo from there, what you do is you turn up at that location and then you totally block off your own creativity and you run around trying to find that photo.
Yeah.
And
you start hunting for it.
Exactly. And then what you do is you end up coming home with someone else's photo.
Yeah. Instead of an adventure, it's a treasure hunt. Right?
Exactly. I often say you become a collector rather than an artist.
Yeah.
And I would love people to turn up at a place. It's great that when you're on a trip, the location is spoon-fed to you at the best time to be there if you're on a good trip. Then what happens is I want people to walk in there and see it for the first time and then start thinking about how they personally want to record that place.
Like, how does that place speak to them personally?
Exactly.
Right? Versus how did it speak to some other person that took a photo and you reinterpreted their photo.
Right. You literally, you block yourself off to all of the possibilities if you're searching for someone else's images. Of course, the other side to that, and I wrote a blog post or a podcast about this a few years ago, is that originality and authenticity is a frame of mind. And, you know, I can come back from a trip with a photograph that is exactly the same as someone else's. But I know that because I didn't look at that person's photo, or I didn't look at other people's photos before I went, everything that I create is original to me.
Yeah.
And it might be that the photo is so obvious that everyone shoots it.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
You know, that's great. For me, I enjoy my work because I know it came from me, and that comes from not filling my head with other people's images before I go.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, a lot of what you're saying is what a lot of like Hollywood movie directors will say about, you know, you want to be educated about different film styles and all that, but you don't want to be influenced unduly by it so that you become an interpreter of that film for another generation. Well, Martin, this has been fantastic, man. Diving through all this stuff, and you've got to fill that first tour, the Namibia tour. Or get, at least if people want to come in on that tour, they need to do it like right now, basically, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So I'll link to that. We'll mention it in the TWiP Pro community for the folks in there if they want to jump up. But they've got a little breathing room for Morocco if they want to go there. So for both of these, if they have questions and they want to dive in a little bit further before they pull the trigger on these, are you available to them if they want to reach out and contact you?
Yeah, I mean, verbally here, because the spam engines, as far as I'm aware, have not yet figured out how to record email messages from audio. Just drop me a line at martin@martinbaileyphotography.com. Or there's a contact. If you go to martinbaileyphotography.com, there's a contact form at the top of the page. Well, a link to the contact form. Just drop me a line. I'll answer any questions anyone's got. And you know what? While we're thinking about it, if anyone does contact me, having seen this episode from that you're going to put out, I'll give you a $200 discount as well. So I know it's not a lot of money, but it's, as my old dad used to say, it's better than a kick in the whatever.
Excellent. Mention TWiP, and you'll knock off $200 from it. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll give you. What I'll do is I'll give you a coupon that you can use to get $200 off the balance payment. So it'll mean that you'll have to still pay the full deposit, but the balance payment will be discounted. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks for doing that. I think that was unexpected. Thank you.
No, it's all right. You're welcome.
Cool, man. All right. Well, thank you, Martin Bailey. You are, this feels like it's a rare occurrence for you to be sitting in your nest there, right? You're always out running around capturing pixels. Right?
You know what? I'm actually at the moment I'm doing my reverse hibernation. I get all active. I'm out wrapped up in. I'm in like minus 30 degrees and stuff in the winter time doing my winter tours. Not the whole time. Sometimes it's around freezing point, but I love getting out in the cold. And the reason I go to these African countries at the times that we do is because they're really nice temperature-wise. They're very comfortable times to be there. But here at the moment, and I know you're having a heat wave over in the US as well, but and the UK. The UK's had some ridiculously warm weather for there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm reverse hibernate at the moment. I do my summers if I'm not overseas. I lock myself in my studio here and just turn on the aircon and keep out of the ridiculous humidity and heat of Tokyo.
Yeah, that's that's good if you can do it. That's wonderful. That's what I'm doing here. The same thing. It's you're right. California is a little bit toasty right now.
I saw it on the news.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And like I said, I've been wanting to pick your brain about this stuff for a while now. And I'm glad we were able to cross the streams so that we could have this conversation. So
that's brilliant.
Everyone wants to learn about all this stuff again. What's the URL for the website?
Well, my website is at martinbaileyphotography.com, and there's a tours link at the top. But I have a short link for each of these tours. If you're interested in the Namibia tour, it's just MBP martinbaileyphotography.ac/Namibia or /Morocco.
Oh, yeah.
So just mbp.ac/Namibia and Morocco.
Perfect. And I'll put both of those links in both the description on YouTube and in the blog post on thisweekinphoto.com. Cool, man.
Thank you very much.
All right, Martin Bailey, thanks a lot, man. We'll see you next time.
No, not at all. Thanks for having me, Frederick.
All right, man. Peace. This is TWiP.